Last time, I told you about the growing tension between me and Lucas, Mark's identical twin. I was falling for him even though I knew I shouldn't. But I couldn't stop it. The chemistry, the connection, it felt undeniable. And yet, I still tried to push the feelings aside. But life has a way of revealing the truth when you least expect it. I never imagined how I would find out the secret that would change everything. It all started with a strange incident. Lucas and I had been spending more time together. One afternoon, we met at a coffee shop, just like we always did. But that day, something felt different. As Lucas was scrolling through his phone, I accidentally caught a glimpse of something that didn't sit right with me. It was a message between him and Mark, only it wasn't like the usual brotherly banter they'd have. The tone was different. It was intimate, like they were discussing something more personal than I had ever seen before. I didn't say anything at the time. I brushed it off, thinking I was just being paranoid. But the unease in my chest only grew. Something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. There had to be a logical explanation. After all, Lucas was still my husband's twin brother, right? But deep down, I started to wonder, what if there was more to the connection between Lucas and me than I had realized? The truth came crashing down when I least expected it. One evening, I came home early from work, only to find Mark and Lucas sitting in the living room. They were speaking in low voices, their eyes darting away when I walked in. The moment I entered the room, they both froze, as if they had been caught doing something they shouldn't. Mark, my husband, looked at me, and there was a flicker of guilt in his eyes. But Lucas's face was unreadable. That's when it hit me. I felt my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't breathe. I had to know. I had to ask. The words spilled out before I could stop them. What's going on between you two? The silence that followed was deafening. Mark looked away, his jaw clenched, but it was Lucas who finally spoke. Lucas's voice was calm, almost too calm, as he said the words that shattered everything I thought I knew. Emily, he began, there's something we need to tell you, something we should have told you a long time ago. The world seemed to stop as he spoke. Mark and we've been switching places. I couldn't believe it. The words felt like they were coming from a different reality, like a nightmare I couldn't escape. I stared at Lucas, my mind racing. What do you mean? I managed to whisper. Lucas looked down, then back at me, and in that moment, he didn't have to say anything more. I could see it in his eyes, the guilt, the truth, the pain. Mark and Lucas had been switching places. It wasn't just a one-time thing. They had been living this life for months, and I had been blind to it. Lucas had been with me, pretending to be Mark. Every kiss, every touch, every whispered word of affection, it had all been a lie. But what hurt the most was the realization that I had fallen for it. I had fallen for Lucas, thinking he was my husband. I had been having an affair with the wrong brother. At that moment, it felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. How could this happen? How could I not have seen it? My world was spinning, and I didn't know how to stop it. As the truth sunk in, the guilt hit me like a ton of bricks. I had betrayed Mark in the worst way imaginable, and I hadn't even known it. The man I loved had been replaced by his twin. How could I ever face him again? How could I ever look into Lucas's eyes without seeing the betrayal? Last time, I shared the truth that broke my heart. Mark, my husband, wasn't the man I thought he was. Lucas, his identical twin, had been living my life in his place. I had unknowingly fallen for Lucas, believing I was in love with Mark. But the truth came crashing down in a way that I couldn't escape. What came next was the hardest part, facing the consequences of my actions. After the revelation, everything changed. The man I loved, the man I thought I knew, was no longer the person I had imagined. Mark barely spoke to me after that night. He didn't yell, didn't scream. He just withdrew. And the worst part? I couldn't blame him. I had betrayed him in the deepest way possible, and now, we were both paying for it. Lucas tried to speak to me, but it only made things worse. His words were soft, full of regret, but I couldn't bring myself to hear them. The betrayal wasn't just against Mark, it was against myself too. Lucas had lied, and so had I. I couldn't face him without seeing the deception in his eyes. For days, I couldn't bring myself to leave the house. I was drowning in guilt, in shame. I didn't know how to fix what I had broken. Mark refused to speak to me, and Lucas. Lucas wasn't my husband. I had no right to him, not after everything that happened. Then came the fight. Mark finally broke his silence, and it was worse than I imagined. His words cut through me like a blade. "How could you do this to me?" he shouted. "How could you betray me with him?" The pain in his voice was unbearable, but I deserved it. I had torn apart everything we had built together. I couldn't stop replaying the moments in my mind, the kisses I had shared with Lucas, the intimacy we had created, all while believing it was Mark. How could I have been so blind? How could I have been so selfish? The guilt consumed me, and I knew there was no way back to the life I once had. I realized that I couldn't stay in that house anymore, not with all the broken pieces scattered around me. I needed to leave, to give myself space to think and heal. The thought of facing Mark every day, knowing what I had done, was more than I could bear. I had to leave him. I had to leave Lucas. I had to find a way to rebuild myself from the wreckage I had caused. Lucas begged me to stay. He pleaded, saying he loved me, that he never meant for any of this to happen. But I couldn't listen to him anymore. The truth was, I had loved him, and I had been wrong to do so. I couldn't stay and allow myself to keep hurting Mark and, ultimately, myself. As I stepped out into the night, I realized I was walking away from everything I had ever known. I had to leave to escape the guilt, to escape the shame, but I wasn't sure where I was going. I had no plan, no direction. I just knew that I couldn't stay in that house, not with everything I had done. Mark was left behind, shattered, as I walked away. I knew he would never forgive me for what I did, and I didn't blame him. I had broken his trust, and it would never be the same again. But even in my own pain, I couldn't bring myself to go back. I had lost him forever. As I walked through the streets, with nothing but my suitcase and a broken heart, I couldn't help but reflect on the choices I had made. I had loved two men, one who I thought was mine and another who had been there all along, but I couldn't have either. The path ahead was unclear, but I knew I had to find a way to make things right, for myself. I know this story is tough to hear, but I appreciate each one of you who has followed along. Your support, your likes, and your comments mean everything to me. I'm sharing this story because I believe in honesty, even when it's difficult. And I hope, by sharing my truth, I can help you understand that even in our darkest moments, we can begin again. Thank you for being with me. In the past few months, my life has felt like it's been constantly in turmoil. I've walked away from the people I loved, from the home that once felt like my sanctuary, and from a life I thought was perfect. But now, here I am, sitting alone in a park, reflecting on everything that has happened. I've made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but I'm beginning to realize that redemption, though hard to find, is not impossible. It's been weeks since I left Mark and Lucas. At first, I thought the pain would never end. I didn't know how to start over. But I realized that the first step in moving forward was acknowledging what I had done. I started writing everything down, how I felt, what I had lost, and what I had learned from this mess I had created. Writing helped me see the truth more clearly. It helped me face my guilt and confront the shame that had been weighing on me. I've spent so much time blaming myself, wondering how I could have been so blind. But the more I reflected, the more I realized that self-forgiveness was the only way forward. I had to forgive myself for my mistakes, for the hurt I had caused, not only to Mark but also to myself. I was human, and I made a choice that I didn't fully understand at the time. But I can't change the past. What I can do is change the way I move forward. I can't undo what I did, but I can start taking responsibility for my actions. I've learned that owning up to my mistakes is the only way to truly begin to heal. I've had to face the consequences, and I will continue to do so. I'm not perfect, but I know I can be better. I have to be better, for myself. I knew I needed help. The pain of everything I had gone through wasn't something I could fix on my own. I made the decision to seek therapy, something I never thought I'd need. But I realized that to truly move on and heal, I needed to understand myself better, why I made the choices I did, and how I could learn from them. The road to redemption was long, and it wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready to walk it. One of the hardest things I had to do was reach out to Mark. I didn't know if he would ever speak to me again, but I had to try. I sent him a message, telling him that I was sorry for what I had done and that I was taking steps to be a better person. I didn't expect him to forgive me, not yet, but I needed him to know that I was working on myself, trying to make things right. I didn't know what to expect, but when I finally got his reply, I felt a rush of emotions. Mark hadn't forgiven me, he made that clear, but he acknowledged my message. He said he needed time, that he couldn't just forget what had happened. And I understood. He deserved time. He deserved space to heal, just as I did. As for Lucas, things were different. He left me a letter, one I hadn't expected. In it, he told me that he understood why I needed to walk away. He admitted that the whole situation had been a mistake and that we both needed to heal separately. It wasn't easy, but I knew that this was for the best. The love I had for him, though real, had only brought more pain into our lives. I had to say goodbye, not just to him, but to the person I was before this all happened. It's been months since I left everything behind. The pain is still there, but it's no longer all-consuming. I've learned that redemption doesn't come from other people forgiving you, it comes from within. I am learning to forgive myself, to make better choices, and to build a life that reflects the person I want to be. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Mark or Lucas will ever forgive me, but I know that I'm on the path to healing. I'm working on myself, day by day, step by step. And for the first time in a long time, I believe that maybe, just maybe, I can find happiness again. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for being here with me through this journey. Your support, your comments, and your kindness have given me the courage to keep moving forward. I hope that by sharing my story, I can inspire someone else who might be going through something similar. If you've learned anything from my story, it's this: even in the darkest times, there is always a chance for redemption. You can always begin again. Please like, comment, and share. Your support means everything. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.